Hey guys, this is Canyon. Today I'll be sharing an information about how did I create an infinite loop or vegetation in my repeater. So in my use case, I am highlighting my top works, wherein I have filtered my best work from my portfolio dataset, and there is an infinite loop over here. So when I say infinite loop, if I were to be on the last page or the last entry in the dataset which is falling under the filtering or falling under the filter top work, if I were to connect it to a dataset, this button would get disabled once I'm on the last entry. Likewise, if I were to be on my first entry, my previous button would be disabled. So we have used a Velo code to create an infinite loop wherein if I were to be on my first project, clicking on this button, I can go on the last entry of my on my last project. Respectively, if I were to be on the last, I will come on to the first project. So for you to have a look and feel, this is how it would work. Currently, Kurukshetra is my first project in my top works. So once this loads, now this is my first project. I click, I go on to the last project in the data set, which is the diet kriya. Likewise, I click next, sorry, next. If I were to go on to the diet kriya being my last project in the dataset, which is under the top work category. Ideally, if it were to be connected to a dataset, this would have been disabled. But over here, we are able to go on to the first project. So this is what we are, this is the information that I'll be sharing in this video of how do we execute or implement the infinite loop for dataset. So let's begin by creating a dummy scenario. Okay. So first, let's add a blank section. Okay, I will I will first create a row above, which is 100 pixel. I will then give a padding of 5% on all four sides. Now since this is a dummy scenario, what we'll do is I will simply create a new collection. Okay, and I will name it uh, dummy projects. Okay, create. I will only add the project names to begin with, since we are just creating a random scenario. So project 1, this will be project 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Okay, so we just use the title for the scenario. Close it. I add a repeater. I will delete the additional set of items. I will change this to list. I will make the background a little more visible. Let's black. Okay. I'll add a title since we are having only title component onto our in our scenario, which is the I'll scale it up 54 54. I'll get it center aligned, get it center aligned. All right, I'll just stretch it to 100. So this is entirely, it will differ based on your use case. Instead of creating all of this again, I'll just simply create a duplicate. I'll cut, I will paste it over here. Okay. I will, let's use the alignment done. 2bh maximum. So my dummy placeholders are in place. Place this over here. I will now connect it to a data set. So since we do not have the data set over here, I'll create a new data set and I will add my dummy projects. Create. My dummy projects is ready and I give the title. Now you can see that immediately once I connected, so immediately there were additional line items that had been created. However, we had deleted the item. So once the data is connected to a data set, by default the data settings are, it will show 12 items. So I change this to 1. I can keep the sorting as is, new to old, which is based on the date created, or else I can create my own logic. So let's keep it new to old. If you want to add filter, you can add it from here directly depending on what is your use case. Okay, so these are the settings I do here. Now comes my id. So when I say id, my uh, the terminology that I'll use to identify my design elements, so which will help me with my coding. So since this is dummy projects, I will put this as db dummy projects, which will be easy for me to understand. This is my next button, so next dummy project projects, and this is my previous, so here we have previous dummy projects. Okay, I need not have to give any id to my repeater. However, if you were to give it, there's no problem. So I'll just name this as dummy projects repeater. Okay, I give this as my dummy project title. Okay, so let's click on next dummy project. I will activate the on click event handler. So I click on click. My event handler is ready. Now we already have a code that I have used for my actual use case, which is the which I've used it on my top work. So I am simply going to copy. I will paste it over here. Now Since our use case is dummy projects and my database is, I do have a database which is dummy projects, so I will first update my database which is db dummy projects. Now over here what we are saying is, on click, my dummy projects database has to get ready. So on ready action, which is an async action. Okay, on ready async, await. Again we are using an on ready async. Okay, so once the database is ready, then I am saying you give me a project count. So I've used a maths logic over here because I need to identify the number. So what I'm saying is, you give me the current page index. Okay, again over here I update my database. So you get me the current page index minus 1. Okay, and then I am passing a logic wherein it's an if logic. So I'm saying if my current page index is equal to project count, then you load the first page. So if I were to be on the last entry of my data set, you have to load the first page. If, else if, again I update my data set over here, else if there is a next page. So after I click, so in my case from Kurukshetra I went on to the next project. There was still 4 projects ahead of that. So if there is a next page, you display the next page, or else you load the first page. Okay, so on database ready, you give me the current page count, which is current page index minus 1. In the if statement, the first statement that we are passing is, if the current page index is equal to my project count, then you load my first page. That is, if my current page index is, or if I am on the last page, you load the first page. If there is a next page available after I moving on, you give me the next page, or else you load the first page. Okay, so this is the same logic that we will use for the previous project. However, there is one additional set of logic that we have to pass. So in the next scenario, we have clearly defined that if I am on the last page, so let me, this is, this will identify if the, if this is the last page in the data set. Okay, so over here it will, we are identifying if this is the last page in the data set. If it is the last page, if it is the last page, you load the first page. If there is a next page, you load a next page, or else you load the first page. Now, so I have the project count over here. Okay, so over here the logic that we are using is, I just need to identify which is my current page index. In the next statement, we are saying to, we are asking the code to identify the current page index and then minus 1. The reason, again, the reason why we have included a minus 1 over here is because when we are identifying the page index, it uses the Python numbering logic, which is a binary logic. Okay, so the entry, the indexing entry, if it is, we have 6 projects, so the count will go 0 1 2 3 4 5 and 6. Okay, likewise, so we are saying if you are on the last entry, you do a -1. Okay, so that is where over here now what we have done is we are simply asking it to identify the current page index, and then we have a project loop. Okay, now project loop is nothing but over here we are giving a backward loop. So if I am on the first project, I click on the previous, it has to load the last project. So I am over here, I'm asking them to give me a total page count. Okay, so in the count we identify the current page index. In the looping logic we identify what is the total page count, and that number is going to be my reference to load my last page from the dataset. Over here again in the if logic, if my current page index is equal to 0, okay, if I'm on the first entry, you have to load the last entry in my dataset. Okay, else if there is a previous page, you load a previous page. Sorry, or else you load the first page. Okay, so if my current index is 0, you will load the first page. If I have a previous page, you will load the previous page, or else you take me to the first entry. Now let's check if this code is working in the preview. Okay, so let's try next. Okay, project 5, project 4, the next is working. Let's try previous project 1. Okay, so from 6 I came to project 1. Now let's go to project 1 and check if we are able to load project 6. Next, project 6. Okay, so my looping is working. So my infinite vegetation over here is working, and you can now use it for your use cases, okay, for your projects. So only make sure that you are updating the element IDs as per your use case, which will help or which will make it easy for you to identify which code is pertaining to which section onto the page. Okay,